I grew up in a middle-class family in Kelowna, which is the interior of British Columbia. My mother was the first person to preach to me. I came home one day and she said, "Did you see the Hare-Krishna monks downtown today?" And I said, "No." "What are they about?" And she said, "Well, they dress in orange and they're singing and chanting on the street. And apparently they go to every town and village chanting, and they never worry if they have a place to stay or food to eat. That everything always works out for them." I said, "Oh, okay." You know. And so as it works out, sometime later, I was working on Vancouver Island. I had left the family home, and while going to the bus one day, I saw for the first time an orange-robed character chasing me through the crowd. And I knew he was coming after me, because I was moving and he was moving. He was behind me, coming. So I turned around to him when he got up to me, and I said, "It's okay. I already know what's happening." And he said, "No, you don't." And he encouraged me to buy a magazine, which I then took on the bus on my trip back to Kelowna. It was a black and white issue with, it had the story in cartoon form of Daksha, about Daksha. And I read that on the bus. Anyway, so that's how it all started. That was my first encounter. I guess I was a seeker. You know, my regular readings were of that sort. And I appreciated the magazine. And I think the next thing that happened, I was in Kelowna and I walked into it was a kind of a hippie store, I guess we'll call it. Books, clothes, jewelry, whatnot. And it was a friend of mine who had opened that store. And on opening day I went in and I looked and I saw my first Bhagavad Gita standing in the center of a table of books, along with how to fix your Volkswagen, how to take care of your hair, different 70s hippie books. And so I opened up the book. The first thing I saw was the Sanskrit script, the Devanagari, and I saw it and my heart started to pound. I read a few verses and I said to myself, I want this book. But I didn't buy it at the time. I didn't have enough money in my pocket, or for whatever reason I didn't buy it at the time. But I said, I want this book. So, a few days passed. I came home to where I was living with some friends. I came walking in the door, and they yell from the living room into the kitchen, "Hey, we've got something for you." And my friend came walking in and he had the Bhagavad Gita. He says, "You're into this kind of stuff." I said, "Where did you get it?" He said, "I was downtown today and somebody made me buy it." So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, I got the book, and a few days later, not very many, just a few days later, I had a 1949 Ford flat deck truck, which was one of my very first automobiles. And I'll remember the day perfectly because it was very sunny, and I climbed in the truck and I was thinking, I'm going to go out today and have a great time. And as I drove downtown, I came to the first stop sign, put my foot on the brake, and the truck stalled. So now, I'm so young that I don't even know what to do. I'm just a new driver, and I've not even had the experience of my car breaking down before. So there I am, I've pushed the truck off to the side of the road. Now, it was sunny, but now it starts to get dark, and it starts to, the clouds come in, it starts to rain, and I'm trying everything to get I'm pulling every button, putting it in, knocking on different things. And all of a sudden some fella pulls over and says, "Do you need a hand?" And I said, "Sure, yeah, of course." And the older than me, he says, "Don't worry," he says, I'm an airplane mechanic. I can fix this truck." But he couldn't. We tried and tried on the side of the road, and he just couldn't figure out what was going on. He said, "Look, I got to go home and get a manual, a motor manual, and have a look at it." So we went over to his house. I walked up the steps. The door was open, and then on the side of his refrigerator was a poster of the universal form. And as soon as I saw it, I started the same feeling that I had before. I said, "Where's that from?" He said, "Oh, that's from the Bhagavad Gita." And I said, "Well, I just got the Bhagavad Gita the other day." And he says, "Whoa, that means the devotees were in town." So, anyway, we went back to the truck with the motor manual and found what was wrong. It was just a loose wire on the back of the ignition switch. Just a little one. There were only two wires and one wire fell off. And we started the car up. I went back to their house for dinner, where they offered their food by chanting with kartals. And they sang. And I remember I had the dinner, and I left the house, and I specifically thought to myself, I will probably never see that man again. Because he's older, and I'm young. Anyway. But he did tell me when I left, he said, "If you ever have any problems with your truck, come back and I'll give you a hand." Well, the very next morning, not far from his house, I was turning a corner and up the street, not very far from where I'd broken down the day before. Bang! And the car's running, but it won't move. The truck's running, but it won't move. So I know this is the real thing. This is serious stuff, because the truck's running, but it won't even go. So I go back to his house and I knock on the door and I say, "You remember me?" And he says, "Yeah, it was last night." And anyway, that's where it started, because we fixed the truck that day, and I had yet again another meal that was offered with kartals and kirtan. And my truck broke down a lot that summer. And I had to, that's what happened. And at some point, he was Bhakta Peter at the time, later to become Rukmanish. And he said, "Why don't you become a vegetarian?" I immediately became a vegetarian, because I always was a bit of a, I didn't really like meat, and didn't agree with me. So that wasn't hard. That was like that. And then we decided that we would go to the temple in Vancouver for Janmashtami. And when that happened, we drove down, took a little tent, pitched it on the lawn of the temple at 16th Avenue, because we got in so late at night. Nobody even knew we were there. It was that late. But then all of a sudden, there was some swarthy, orange-robed gentlemen, and they weren't really being even very pleasant, actually. They were telling us, "What are you doing on the front lawn? You can't do this." That was okay. We packed up and went to Mangal Artik and spent the day Janmashtami. Oh, one nice thing I think you'd like. I remember, I guess it was time for Guru Puj. I guess that's what was going on, because all of a sudden I heard a big yell. One of the Madajis yelled, "Prabhupada's coming! Prabhupada's coming!" I was like, whoa! And people all over the building were yelling, "Prabhupada's coming! Prabhupada's coming!" I could hear little voices going from the different floors through the building. I went out onto the porch, and I was looking for the limousine to come. I thought the limousine was coming. I thought Prabhupada was here. But that was just how they got ready for Guru Puj. Because then they started Guru Puj, and, Prabhupada's picture, and that was really neat, actually. It was really neat that they all, they really knew it. Okay, so while there, the devotees had mentioned that they had a farm, a new farm. And I think for me at the time, I was very attracted to the idea of an agrarian lifestyle, a simple, more self-sufficient lifestyle. And I really wanted to go to this farm at Bridesville, near Osoyoos. And so we were making plans to go. I'm going to see how to tell this part of the story nicely. We were making plans to go, and well, basically what happened, without telling the whole story, we were ready to go, and I went to my family home to wash my clothes in preparation for the journey the next day. And while there, my sister, 16, she was very sick, and with flu-like symptoms, and got fairly serious, and because she was quite ill, and I took her to the hospital, and they admitted her immediately, and apparently what she had was meningitis. So that evening I got a call, and I went down to the hospital, and basically what happened was that my sister expired that evening while my mother was chanting Hare Krishna, because I had written it on a piece of paper, and I told my mother, who was quite upset, as you can imagine. I said, just chant this and everything's going to be fine. And she crunched it up and threw it in the ashtray, and she was quite hysterical while all this was going on, and I was just waiting. And at some point my mother uncrumpled the piece of paper, and on her own she chanted the mantra. And at that moment my sister left her body, because they have a signal that comes out, 999. And so, Rama Rama Hari Hari, 999, just like that, yeah. And so anyway, the point of that is that the doctor then came and told us that, well, you know, if you don't get sick in the next 7 days, you're going to be okay, but you could get sick. So that also added an angle of vision to everything. I had to wait a few days before I could go to the farm to make sure I wasn't sick and I wouldn't contaminate the devotees. But anyway, that's how it started, and when I could, I went to the farm, and that's where I kind of made up my mind to become a devotee. Let's see. My friend Peter and I, we drove to the farm. We got there late in the afternoon, or rather the evening actually, and there were only a few devotees there at the time, and they had not yet taken possession of the farm. They had an old bus that they were using as a temple room. This was a beautiful bus with a beautiful temple room that the devotees had built. It had nice pictures and a nice altar. And they said, sleep here in front of the altar. So it was myself, then my friend Peter, later Rukmanish, and this other gentleman. And then we went to sleep. But in the middle of the night, a van must have come in from somewhere, because when I woke up, there was like 20 people in the room, like sardines. And and then I had my first cold shower in this little cubicle in a little washroom in the bus. And most of the devotees had already had theirs, so I was towards the end. So put me in the shower, and I remember while I was in the shower in the cold water, boom, samsara davam, boom, 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 and immediately the bus started to go like this, right? And I'm in the shower, and and in those days, someone handed you a dhoti right away. You had a dhoti on first thing, Here's a dhoti. And nice morning program, lots of fun. And then it was time for class. And this is what happened. Such a hit was giving class. Well, actually, first I've got to tell you, the bus was very beautiful. The temple room was very beautiful. On either side of the altar, there were if the altar is here, on either side of the altar were peacocks with great big tails coming up, painted on the wall, and there was a door in each peacock tail. One was a cupboard for some for belongings and whatnot, and the other door was a hallway going back into the kitchen. So such a hit was giving class, and in this beautiful temple room inside the bus, we were all sitting around the edge. He was giving class sitting over on one side of the altar. And he's talking about Krishna, of course, action and reaction. All of a sudden, bursting through the peacock tail from the kitchen comes his wife, Nicolashvari, and she is screaming in Spanish, 1,000,000 miles, an hour, like, just, she's screaming in Spanish, and she holds up this 9x9 cake pan. It's full of burfi, white burfi, which was the morning offering, the offering. And she screams finally in English, "Someone stole the burfi!" And there's a handprint where someone has just gone, boom, boom, just like that, and taken a whole handful of burfi out of the unoffered pan. The unoffered morning sweet. Boom. It's like, that living in the material world, you see that hand, It's like a perfect handprint. Now, such a hit, he gets really upset. And he says, look, somebody in this room took the burfi. Who stole the burfi? Nobody said anything. Don't forget, this is my very first Bhagavatam class. This is it for me. I'm either going to leave today and never come back, or I'm going to make some sense of this whole thing. Such a hit turns around, he points his finger right at me and says, "Did you steal the burfi?" And, it was pretty heavy actually. And I said, "No, I didn't steal the burfi." Then he took his finger and he pointed to the person next to me. He said, "Did you steal the burfi?" "No, I didn't steal the burfi." "Did you steal the burfi?" Every person in the room he pointed his finger at and asked them, "Did you steal the burfi?" And one nice devotee, Gopijan, he was sitting to the side and he was working on a lamp, fixing a lamp that was broken, the light. He's fixing it. He asked him, "Did you steal the burfi?" "No." Next person, "Did you steal the burfi?" "No." All the way through the room to the last person. Nobody admitted to stealing the burfi. So such hits quite upset, and he said, "Look, someone in this room stole the burfi. Krishna's gonna let you know," like this, and then all of a sudden, Gopijan gets electrocuted working on the light, and I mean electrocuted. He's like, well, it was the strangest thing, because all of a sudden, every person in the room had this incredible realization. Everyone all at once turned, myself included. we all churned, all our fingers pointed at him, and we all said, "You stole the Burfie!" He did steal the Burfie. So that was my first Bhagavatam class, at the farm, and it worked. It really worked. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it started. So, shortly after that, a few days later, I shaved up. And I stayed at the farm and immediately started to help build the temple room. That's just what happened. I was helping Kala, and he was making an arch, and for some reason I knew it wasn't right. I don't know why. I just said, "Look, it's not right. I think it's supposed to be like this." And then he said, oh, you can build the temple room. But anyway, so next thing I know, I was building the temple room. And some time went by, and the devotees built an addition onto the building for a kitchen. And I really liked it there. That was my first time, every morning Mangalartik, and it was really good for me. One night, we went to bed in the Brahmachari ashram upstairs, and everybody was in their bunks. The whole place was shut down. And it was about 1 a.m, and the little voice said to me, "Go downstairs." So I went down into the temple room, and when I got there, the wall was on fire, where the stove had been installed in this new addition. The wall was on fire. So I yelled out fire, and although I hadn't worked on that part of the building, I had watched them build it. It was built from 2x6s, which we had a lot of because there was a mill nearby. They were really cheap, and they built the walls by putting the studs like this, and 2x6s nailed on either side, and they were filled with sawdust. Very flammable, but a one way to build. And so I knew how they had built the wall, and I just ran over and grabbed the skill saw, set it to its maximum depth, ran outside, and zzz, 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 like this. Then I ran inside, zzz, 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 and the wall's on fire. Boom! And then the wall fell out onto the snow outside on fire. But it was outside now. And that's what happened. It was really nice there. You'll hear a few other fire stories probably. There were some fires there, but that's the only one that I witnessed. So I can remember at one point the GBC at the time, I think it was Jayatirtha. I can remember them telling me, "The GBC wants to talk to you." Oh, okay. So, to talk to the GBC. What did he want to talk to me about? He felt that it was time that I become more serious and go to Vancouver and go on Sankirtan. So that's what I did, and I wasn't very good at Sankirtan. I just wasn't very good. I obviously I wasn't very sincere. I wasn't sincere at all, and I could not get any results in that way. So, but still, didn't matter. I'll just tell you about my first traveling Sankirtan party quickly. I was sent in a Volkswagen van with Kripanidi, Mahesh, and Kalki to travel down into the States and do Sankirtan. And that was interesting for me because I was Bhakta stew. And really there was, if you were the Bhakta, you had to do everything. You were like, everybody made sure you knew you were the bottom little fellow in the pecking order there. And which was fine. It was fine. But because I wasn't very good at Sankirtan, the boys would drop me off in places like in San Diego, in the furthest part of town, and they drop me off in the parking lot, and off they go, and I'm a little Canadian guy running around the parking lot trying to get people to give me money for some, I think it was a little American flag, or I can't remember exactly what it was. But I was having no success whatsoever. I was there for a better part of the day, and I just was not doing very well despite my efforts. And all of a sudden, I'm just adding this story because it's a good story. I'm going to say this story. All of a sudden, screeching around the corner comes a gold Cadillac. And I like to say that as it screeches around the corner, it's up on two wheels, because it really did seem like... These guys came in, screeched into the parking stall, all four doors open, four elegantly dressed black American men with pinstripe suit and tie and shiny shoes. They all jump out at once. They run to the back of the car, open up the trunk, and pull out 8 pies, one in each hand. So there's 4 men, 8 hands, 8 pies. And then they zoom out into the parking lot to do the same thing I had just been doing. And very quickly, each of them approached people as they were coming to the car and sold the pie. I guess they may have been Muslim Brotherhood, or I'm not sure, but they were collecting. And then boom, 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 they're back in the car, and then out of the parking lot. I'm just telling you what happened. So, later on, I remember it was the Christmas marathon, and in those days, almost all the devotees would go out, except for a skeleton crew that maintained the temple. And I remember going to Baudak and telling him, look, I'm not very, I just can't seem to pull that off. I said, if you make me the temple commander, I will do all the service, freeing up whatever devotees there are left over. And he said, you're on. And I became the temple commander that Christmas marathon, because everybody would go and I would do all the offerings and all the cleaning and whatnot. And the temple commander in those days, the job description was, you tried to find other people to do whatever would needed to be done. If you couldn't, you had to do the job yourself. That was the way it went. And so yeah, I did some service in that way. I helped do some different things around the temple and helped manage the temple on that level. And of course the temple commander often has to deal with the new people, if there is somebody new, and whoever. And so I guess I had a natural inclination I did well with the new people, and I guess because I was a friendly person, and no one will ever listen to you if they don't trust you, if you're not their friend. It doesn't matter what you're trying to tell them. It all starts with, people have to feel that you care. So yeah, so it just naturally, I fell into becoming the Bhakta leader as well, and went to England and spent some time with Sthanur for a few months, and I was lucky to be thrown in jail doing Harinam in London. That was an eye-opener for me. I remember in the police station, the bobbies coming into the room and saying, "So what exactly were you doing downtown?" And they let us have a kirtan in the police station to show them what we were doing downtown. Let's see. Okay. So, I had after some time we moved to Burnaby, and it was nice. I think I was the first devotee to live on the Burnaby property while the previous tenants were leaving. Okay, so I also the Bhakta, as part of the Bhakta program, I had taken over the old bus that the devotees had, that I talked about previously. Became my bus.
You want to tell us about that bus?
Well, okay, I should tell you. It's the one I was just talking about with the peacock tail, the peacocks on either side of the altar inside, and we at that point dressed it up some more by putting a dome into the temple room over top. Nice new gossamer thin lace, blue lace curtains. There was some nice carpeting on the walls, a black and white motif on the floor, and we had the ladies paint around the dome in the roof pastimes of Krishna on one side and pastimes of Lord Chaitanya on the other, all around the roof.
Where did the bus come from?
Well, the bus was there. It was an old bus that the devotees had been using when I joined. And so that became my bus that or not my bus, but I would take care of it. And I would, every summer, go and travel about and find different places to put on a festival. And so, for example, one summer we went to a fair in the Kootenays at a place called Edgewood. And this was a big festival, lots of people, music, campers, maybe a three-day festival. And I remember when we came driving in, now we've got a new bus now, a different bus, because the old one didn't last. So we've got a nice new bus, big blue bus with a raised roof, no windows, very nicely made up on the inside with a teak altar, marble, full kitchen. When we pulled into the festival, there was a roadblock, and there was a lot of police presence. And the reason for that was because this festival had attracted a very, very large group of motorcycle personalities, biker types. And so much so that they actually had a big camp of their own set up where they were all congregating, all the bikers. And once we found our spot where we were going to set up our camp, the way we did it was during the day we would invite people to come back to the bus in the evening and have kirtan and a feast with us. So I remember that morning, that first morning, the first thing I did early, like we always did, I would get up first, actually before the other devotees, and determine where everybody would take their bath. It could be this lake, that creek, wherever. And in this particular case, you had to drive to it. So anyway, I come back after getting ready, wake all the other devotees, send them off to have their early morning bath, and I'd start cooking the sweet rice first thing in the morning. So make a big giant pot of sweet rice, and 5 gallons of sweet rice. And I didn't like runny sweet rice. I like sweet rice a little bit thicker, more like a little creamy pudding-like. Mm? But still, sweet rice is supposed to be ice cold. So after the sweet rice was cooked, we took some duct tape and duct taped the lid on, and then took the sweet rice and put it in the creek, sitting in the creek with the water lapping at the top. So so we'd spend the day cooking like that and getting ready for that big feast in the evening, and I'd send some of the devotees off to invite people to come back. I gave specific instructions. I told the devotees, I said, do not go into the biker area. I wanted things smooth. I didn't want to have to deal with any situations. So I said, don't don't go into the biker area. The feast was cooked, very simple, you know, sour cream, turmeric, vegetables. You have your sour cream sabji, the sweet rice, puris, halava, fancy rice, nectar. Always the nectar with orange juice and buttermilk. Straight, no water.
All of this cooked in the bus.
All of it cooked in the bus, yeah. And I had a really nice pandal tent, and some people may know what a pandal tent is. It's sewn with different colored cloth, and there's mirrors, and there's usually quite a pattern. It's just a big square tent. It's more for the sun than anything else. And we would set this up on bamboo poles just outside along the edge of the bus, attached to the bus, so you could walk into the bus from under the tent. It was the evening. Guests were showing up. We actually had quite a complement of guests under the tent, beside the bus. And the prasadam is being served out, and everybody's having a pretty good time. It kind of felt a little transcendental. All of a sudden, bagada, 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 bagada. You hear this noise from a big machine, and everybody looks over, and through the bush, coming directly towards the bus, is the biggest, meanest, and I'll just say right now, he was the ugliest looking biker I have ever seen in my life. And he's wheeling his machine over stumps through the bush, and bagada, bagada, bagada. And he's coming directly for the tent and the bus. Everybody gets a little anxious because he drives the motorcycle right into underneath the tent and parks it right in the middle underneath the tent, with everybody sitting around on the ground. Parks the motorcycle, turns it off, and he looks at me. I'm standing there, and he says, "I've come for some prasad." I go like this. I'm telling you, I never usually snap my fingers, but I was like, it was Veda Vyas, I think, was serving. Got that plate over there to him, you know. And he got the plate, and he went, he took it, he leaned back on his motorcycle, and he put his feet up on the handlebars, and took that plate like this, and he took his spoon, and he took some prasadam, and he goes like this, and he goes, "Oh, prasad." Well, you thought it was transcendental before, right? Immediately, we were flying now, boy. It was like really something, you know. Oh, see, sitting there. Oh, it was so much fun. Some time passed, and coming down the road, just at the back of the bus now, running along the side of the tent, comes walking a great big tall cowboy. He's dressed all in black, from head to toe, black hat, boots, was walking along. And the same Prabhu who had just passed the prasadam to the biker stepped out into the lane with a plate and offered it to the cowboy. And the cowboy goes, "Get out of here!" And Mick goes like that. All of a sudden, "Hey, you!" Everybody churns, and there's the biker. And he is glaring at this cowboy, and there is literally fire coming out of his eyes, and he's looking at them. And now the cowboy sees the biker. And the biker points his finger at the cowboy and says, "Eat it!" The cowboy, I'm telling you, I'm not embellishing any of these things. The cowboy, he folds up like an accordion. And on the way down, he grabs the plate. And all of a sudden, he's got the plate, and he's sitting on his heels, and he's about this tall. He went from like, whoosh, he's about this tall, and he's got the plate. Takes a spoonful. And he goes, "Hey, this is really good." That's one of my best stories. So that's what we did. That's basically what we did. We drove around in the bus in the summer, and we put on our little festival, and we would bring occasionally people back to the temple with us. Sometimes they would stay forever. So now, it wasn't long after that I heard about the rainbow gatherings that they had in the States. And we decided that we would investigate. Actually, I'm getting a little out of order a little bit, but because this really happened, the story I'm going to tell you now happened in the previous bus with the peacock tails on either side of the altar. Our very first rainbow was in Montana, and we drove there through Canada, through Alberta, and I remember on the way, well, we had a nice crew. We actually had Baudak with us. We had Mahesh, we had Rukmanish. There's a few others, a little foggy, but I remember we couldn't get through the border. We didn't have enough money. We had to have enough money to get across the border. And we went back to the nearest little town in Alberta, and Mahesh, who was a gifted Sankirtan devotee, he raised enough money for us to go back down to the border, and he said, "Hey, we got some money." Can you imagine we didn't have enough money? And how is it that we didn't have enough money? And we were going to do a festival, but still, I guess we had all the grains, and we had our cooking supplies in the bus already. Okay, so when we got there, we parked the bus as close as we could to the trail that led up to where the people were. Now, if you're not familiar with a rainbow gathering, what it is alternative culture people from all over the United States and Canada would go to these gatherings in the thousands. These were not small affairs. In the thousands, many thousands. And over the years, sometimes as many as 20 or 30,000 people show up at these. But this was our very first one. and we didn't even know what we were getting into at that point. But we parked the bus as close as we could to the trail, because I thought that if we were going to serve prasadam, that's where we would do it, where people came off the trail back towards where they parked their cars. So we went off on a kirtan up the mountain. Bahudak, the first time I ever saw him do it, we had the harmonium and we took a chutter and tied it onto the handles, and he put the harmonium hanging like this. And we went off up the trail having a walking kirtan, or I should say a dancing kirtan up the trail. And we would travel, and then we would stop when there was a big crowd, and we would move on, and then we would stop again. So this is how we went up the mountain. And it was a dried out riverbed, and up and up and up we went for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And eventually we got to the top of the mountain, where on top of the mountain there was thousands and thousands of people. The dust was rising because everybody was beating on drums and sticks, like the gopis dance. They were doing this giant stick dance thing, all the hippies. And the drums were going, and everybody was dancing, and this was all on top of the hill. And we come up the hill. Up, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. To the top of the hill. And we entered that group of people, those thousands and thousands of people that were dancing and playing their drums. We entered, I'm telling you, we entered like a sperm enters an ovum. People went crazy. They saw that we were there. They just went crazy. And what did they do? Well, they all joined our kirtan. Now, everybody's chanting Hare Krishna. Thousands. It was very intense. Went on for about an hour or more. We were so young and frankly so dumb that we didn't even carry water with us in those days. So we had been on the trail chanting non-stop for maybe 8 hours or more, and we never stopped. We never stopped a kirtan, ever, for any reason. So anyway, it was a bit of an event. After we decided to make our way back down the mountain, and we went back down, and we just started cooking. And we just started cooking, and as we cooked, people who had seen us on the mountain in the day were coming down off the mountain to get more of the same. And there was one fellow, his name is Fantuzzi. He's a very popular, well-known character in the States. He's a Krishna Bhakta from India, and he had quite a group following him in his own way. And he had seen us prior in San Francisco having a kirtan with Baudak. I played the drum for Baudak. And we were having a kirtan in San Francisco. I actually have the picture here. I'm just going to have a look. Just going to show you guys so you can appreciate it. There he is, right there. This fella here. And that is actually the kirtan. That.
Him?
Yeah. This is me, right? This is me in the drum. But this is him here. I never knew him at this point. I just noticed his picture later on. But
Fantuzzi?
Fantuzzi. Fantuzzi. And well, at that particular kirtan in San Francisco, the stage broke. It's a big kirtan. Anyway, so Fantuzzi, he was really moved by the kirtan up in the mountain. He's a Krishna Bhakta. So he came down to the bus that evening, and there was some of us sitting in the bus, and Fantuzzi, he's a professional musician. He started to sing the Hare Krishna mantra with a really nice tune on the guitar. And we were accompanying him as he sang. But then, as it got more intense, Bahudak took over the kirtan, because now he had learned this new tune, and there was nothing quite as exciting as a nice new tune. And there was some excitement inside the temple room on the bus. Well, everybody decided that they had to be on this bus. So literally hundreds of people are trying to get into the bus, to get in on this kirtan, which was getting more and more and more and more intense. And the bus is going, of course, like, like this, hey? And so many people got in the bus. There were people on the hood. There were people in the hallway. The temple room had so many people in it that you couldn't, after a while, you literally couldn't move at all. That's how many people. I was playing the drum like this, right? So then that little voice again says, push from side to side. So I started to push. Well, everybody got it. And we all the many hundreds of us started to dance and push from side to side, like that. So there are people that say that the bus was actually lifting off its tires, which I don't know if I believe it, but they say that it was actually lifting off the tires in this kirtan. Right? And there was a number of people that became devotees right after that. Dhritarashtra witnessed this kirtan, and he became a devotee. A number of people were there that I heard later. Anyway, this was the type of thing that went on at the rainbow gatherings. We would cook all day long. I had made 6 pots that were this big. They were this wide and this deep, as big as 2 people could move, could lift. And after that year, I went back to numerous other rainbow gatherings with the new bus, those big pots. I would collect donations in Vancouver and fill the bottom of the bus about that deep with rice, split peas, farina, spices, oil, sugar, and all the equipment. And with those big pots, we could then cook big time. So yeah, we cooked at least conservatively like maybe up to 5,000 servings in a day once we got going. Yeah, and when people came, we would do the same thing. We would have a big dinner in the evening. We would spend all day inviting people to come, and as people were served, they would be served, and they would sit down and eat while we were having kirtan. Sometimes the lineup would be four lines wide, 4 lines to be served, and the 4 lines of people would go literally for miles around the corner. Yeah, it's hard for many people to understand just how many people show up at these events, and they couldn't take care of themselves very well in those days because it was all one. But we were the Krishna kitchen, so nobody could just walk into our kitchen and take something because it was the Krishna kitchen. But if you were all one in the other kitchen, well, you couldn't really say too much. But just trying to see here. Here's a couple pictures. I want to show you the pots. There's the big pots. You see? Yeah. I think that was in Oregon, that particular. Yeah. So we would, and whenever we came back from the Rainbow, we would always bring a few guests with us. Not bad. Yeah. Okay. So, and there's not much else. The only other thing that I contributed very much to was because after this I had a temple in Victoria. We rented a small mansion by Swan Lake at the end of Rainbow Street at the top of Christmas Hill. That's where our temple was. And it was all very private, little mansion on the hill. And the first thing we did was, like many temples, the very first thing we did was sand and refinish the floors, the oak floors. So it was a very nice building, very clean. We had a nice altar and fabulous prasadam, and we ran a retreat so that anyone who was interested could come and spend some time at our retreat. And it was a nice atmosphere. It was very clean, very clean. There was nothing heavy. Once again, as far as I understand, if you really want to preach, or if you want to share anything like this, you have to treat people fairly, not judge them, and give them your love, and then they can listen. They can listen to you. So that's all we did, and some devotees came. Some devotees came, and then we had some success there. So, but nothing, it didn't last forever, for whatever reason. And I then began looking for a farm property, because I knew that in British Columbia, because of the topography, There's many valleys. Many valleys cut off from elsewhere, and we were specifically looking for a piece of property that was remote but not impossible, surrounded by crown land on all sides, that kind of thing. And so yeah, I looked for quite a few years at different properties. I would visit these properties, and this was just my little on the side thing that I did. I would study all the different available properties and go and visit them, and we had found a property in the Christian Valley, and it was a little bit too remote, but very nice. I guess I could tell you another humorous story. We're at this other piece of property that we're trying to purchase in the Christian Valley, and we were just visiting, and we were staying in a cabin, and there was quite a group of us. I think we had 2 carloads of people, so there was quite a group of us there, all men, and very cold, up in the cabin, and it's the same drill every morning. Nobody really wants to get up, but the first guy gets up, and then everybody else has to get up. So I would get up first, go to the creek, take my bath. Now, the creek, the river, which was right outside the cabin, came right off the Monashee Glacier. This water was cold. It was so cold that when you went into the water, you could go down once, but you didn't try to go down twice, because if you did, you ducked under the water once. If you tried to duck under the water twice, you might just expire and float away, because that's how cold it was. And nobody wants to go and take their bath in there. But that guy that goes first, he sets the standard, so he goes, and then he gets, so come on, you guys gotta go, So one by one, the devotees went to have their bath. One really nice devotee, Kartikeya. Kartikeya, your dad knows Kartikeya. Kartikeya, he was from the Caribbean, from Dominique. And oddly, Kartikeya and I have the same kind of body. We look kind of the same. He didn't want to go down and take his bath. He's the last one now. Everybody's gone. And we're like, come on, you gotta go. You gotta do it. Well, man or a mouse. So he goes off down to the river, and we're all watching out the window. And he goes down in the water. Boom, he comes up. He starts running back towards the building. And I tell the devotees, quick, let's grab the door. Let's all grab the door so that he can't get in. And he doesn't even know we're there. We're all on the other side of the door, and there's the handle of the door. And we've got all our hands on this handle. We're all holding the door like this. And we can hear him running, up the porch. And then all of a sudden the door just flew open. And we were left holding the handle. It always blew my mind, because he never knew we were there. He just came up, opened the door. Like, it wasn't like, an extra, right? Just boom, we're left there holding the handle, and he's over by the stove. we lost $10,000 on the deal because we were going to buy this property. We were actually going to sell our property in Burnaby to go and buy this farm, and it was a night and day kind of a deal, and we never managed to sell Burnaby. We lost $10,000, the deposit that you make when you purchase a property. So anyway, that was the end of that, and I was given direct orders from the GBC not to bother the devotees again with a farm. And the funny thing is, I still knew, even no disrespect to the GBC, of course, but I knew in my heart that I had a little job to do, and that was find a property. I just knew it, and so I continued on my own looking at properties, and until some years later, I saw the ad for the property that we have now, and I came and visited, and I knew right away that something was going to happen, and it was at the time just really a matter of convincing Bauda Prabhu, and from there others, that this was a valuable thing to do. So yeah, that's what happened. And yeah, so well, when we first purchased the Saranagati property, I moved here with my wife, Mahatma, and my two little girls, Gopika and Krishna Lingita. And all the available bhaktas and brahmacharis that could come at the time. And while at the rainbow gatherings, I had fallen in love with the yurt, which is the building you see here. And when we first came to the farm, the first thing we did was build a collection of yurts to service us as some dwellings and temple room. So and that was a good thing at the time, because it didn't cause us to build permanent buildings and whatnot. It was more fluid, and it served us well. And of course, as you can see, I'm still living in a yurt 30 years later. That's 30 years in the tent. And the reason for that is because, well, it's paid for. It's warmer than most people's houses, and it just fits the mood of a simple life, where you don't really take everything so seriously. We can still take our yurt down and move it if we choose, and the grass would all grow up again underneath. So, yeah, so So yeah, so I never, after the first few years of being here at the farm, my first marriage suffered somewhat because we overworked ourselves, I think. And that was okay. There's no regrets there. But that's, I left the association of the devotees, the intimate association of devotees, for maybe 10 years. And when I met my present partner, Narayani, I told her, I said, there is a very nice place. We might want to go live. And of course that was here at Saranagati. And we came up and made some application to enter the community, and the devotees accepted us, and we've been here ever since. Yeah, so there's not a lot I can say about the early days, except that anyone who was there remembers it fondly. We all had a great time. We all felt like we were doing something important and making a contribution. And I'm really happy that Saranagati is still doing what it's doing. And I really like the way it's doing it, because Saranagati is Saranagati. It's not being run by people outside of our community. It is being run by our community, and I think it has a lot to offer the rest of the world, ultimately, because of the fact that it is a little bit of it is open, and
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare